This week on Lead One, Decluttering Your Mind.
Welcome to the Lead One podcast, where our mission is to lead leaders through leadership. The goal is to get 1% better every day. Let's see what Drew and the guys have to say.
Welcome back to Lead One podcast. I've got the crew with us this morning, Brandon France and Sam Buck.
What up?
So we came up with this topic after listening to a couple podcasts and really realizing as a group that all of us struggle with decluttering our brains, keeping a system. I know one thing that I'm guilty of is thinking that my head can be my calendar. And I don't know if it's a combination of life's getting busier and I'm getting older, but that's not working so well for me anymore. And there's a guy named David Allen. He's not a cognitive scientist, but he's certainly an expert in this space and has developed systems and works with several executives on a system of kind of an inbox and an outbox in regards to everything in your life, not just in business. And one of the lines that he has is your brain is for ideas, not holding them. He talks about if your calendar's in your head is a crappy office. And so, he talks about the referencing that there's a reason why at 3 a.m. you think you need batteries. And when you're at the hardware store, you can't remember that you need batteries, right? Because your brain is not wired to think about things in the order of which you need them and how those thoughts take up cognitive real estate. So I'm going to kind of open it to you guys as along the lines of this topic.
All right. So, as everybody know, I got 5 little girls. And we're more organized at home than I am at work. And it's because of my wife. She's the organized queen, Kudos to you. But she has, routines for everybody. She got morning routines for everybody, list, like if they have to clean up the kitchen, there's a list there to check off everything that needs to be cleaned up. If it's and even for myself, like she got a list of stuff that she don't want to think about that she think I can handle, and it's there, and it's a list of things to do, blah 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 blah. But I think all these systems are in place so you don't have to think about them. So things could just get done, and you can use your mind to do more important things or more stuff that takes more thought versus little stuff around the house. But at work, I'm still trying to develop systems that make sense to me. I know I listened to Dave Meltzer. You ever heard of him? Mm-mm. Dave Meltzer. He says that you got to be a slave to your calendar, and that's what I'm working on at work. Just putting my free time in the calendar, putting the things my appointments in the calendar. He says like at the beginning of the year he puts all his like vacations in first. You know what I mean? And then all his family stuff is in his calendar first, and then he organizes his work around his family stuff so it's not getting stepped on by his work. But yeah, I'm working on all those type of systems at work. I don't do a good job of it. So when we had this topic and we're able to deep dive into people and how they organize their work life and their home lives, I was excited to try to learn something new.
One of the things that was interesting that I thought David mentioned in this particular podcast was the idea of cognitive real estate. That you're, if you looked at it, that your brain only has so much capacity, and a general thought takes up X number of space, and at some point you're maxed out. He made there was a quote from Albert Einstein that said, "Why do I need to remember my own phone number when I can look it up?" It's not a lack of intelligence. He's just saying that I'm not going to take up brain power with remembering those things. And talking about Andrea making lists, that gets it out of her brain. And I think one of the things that I'm guilty of, and the reason that I probably don't keep a more detailed calendar is, one, I probably have a little too much confidence in my brain, but also it's the discipline of taking the time to either write something down or enter it into that calendar and then becoming reliant upon it. And so, the concept that he uses is step one is literally everything that's taking up space in your mind, you put it on a piece of paper, everything, and you put it in a stack. Step two is then going through and determining an action for every single one of those things that has your attention, which to me is would be pretty overwhelming to do. But I realize I'm so guilty of this because, for instance, this week there's a little project that I've got to get done work-wise. It's going to take me about 10 minutes. It's not super imperative from the standpoint of it's got to be done right now. But when I was thinking about this episode today, I kept thinking about this little project and the fact that I bet I've thought about it 80 times this week. And it would take me 10 minutes to get it done. But I've not budgeted the time to get it done. And I think about now, looking back, look at all the real estate and the brain power I have spent thinking about. Usually it's on my drive home. I think, man, I didn't get that done today. I got to get that done tomorrow. And tomorrow comes and goes. And so that's just something that I'm struggling with. And I think it's a discipline thing.
For me, I think systems do create a consistency and an ability to evaluate your actions. I think sometimes when you don't have a system on something, you're working, right? You're doing things, but you don't know how to evaluate it. Sometimes you end up working in circles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think systems create a consistency. You know what I mean? Consistency obviously creates productivity. And I think, for me, systems have always been a big challenge because my brain is always thinking about 30 different things at one time. But I have noticed probably over the last couple months, as we may notice, I've been able to focus in on certain aspects at certain times. Now, it's still a work in progress, but it's it helped my efficiency, if that makes sense. Efficiency, it's a certain level of discipline that goes into systems. And you have to overcome that a little bit at a time. I believe we talked about before how you can't just make a overall change. If you're trying to get up earlier, you don't get up 2 hours earlier right away. You get up 15 minutes earlier, right. And then the next week you get up another 15 minutes earlier, and you keep that process going until you achieve your goal. I think I'm at the place now where I'm realizing the areas that I really need to implement a lot more structure, and then trying to implement a step by step. It's still a work in progress. By far nowhere near where it needs to be, but I think I'm trying to get a little bit better at it.
I have to agree with you. I've ran my whole life in my brain. I'm realizing the older I get, the busier I get, the harder it is. Especially when you have children. It's really hard because there's no system. Well, there are systems for children, bedtime, nap time, dinner time, but I find myself that if Drew, actually you started it when you started sending out email reminders for meetings, and I realized, wow, that's one less thing I actually have to think about because it just pops up on my phone, and I went home and I incorporated that. I never told you that. I went home and incorporated that because Misi was saying to me, well, we got a doctor's appointment on Wednesday, or this bill is due on the 22nd. I'm like, listen, I'm not doing this with you anymore. Send it to me in a reminder and put it in a calendar reminder that's going to pop up every day on this date. And if it's something baby related, doctor's appointment, put it in a calendar, send me and put it as a reminder, a day before, 2 days before, whatever it is. Stop telling me things the day of, because the day of is it just creates more chaos in my brain. And I'm realizing more and more that despite how successful I can be in business, when it comes to the finite things, and as far as what it takes to be successful, I can do it all when it comes to just managing myself. But when it comes to managing, like you said, Brandon, a family, a household, other businesses outside of your day-to-day business, or just appointments and places you need to be, or things you need to do, if you don't write it down, or if I don't write it down, and I'm struggling with writing it down, that's the other part of it. I'm struggling with writing it down, and that's taking up brain space. The brain space of just writing it down, and I'm struggling with that every week, saying, "Oh God, I really need to do better at writing this down. Oh God, I really need to do better at writing it down."
Yeah, it's taking up that real estate.
Yeah, and even this morning on the way to work, something as simplistic as I need to go to the bank because I need to move some money around, and I've been meaning to do this for the last couple of weeks, and every day I say, "All right, when I get a chance, I'm going to do it. When I get a chance, I'm going to do it."
Well, I think that's the hardest part. Is starting the system. It's starting that thing. It's like going to the gym. Sometimes the hard part isn't doing the workout. It's actually getting up, getting your butt to the gym.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think starting that system or starting anything is usually the hardest part.
Well, and it kind of takes us to that, the quote we've all heard about if you don't run the day runs you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of to the point. If you don't budget time to go to the bank, the next thing you know, it's 5:00 and you can't go to the bank anymore.
Yep. Yeah. Dry cleaning.
And I'll
piling up.
Missy may be listening to this episode. I'm gonna be in her corner on this one, and because I know I'm guilty of this. Is the day of telling you something probably wasn't the first time she told you, because Brady would be all over me about that. Like, listen, I told you 3 times before this, and so there's several steps to like David Allen's methods, for instance, but there were 3 that kind of jumped out to me, and I was curious maybe what your guys' methods are. It's capture, clarify, and organize. So capturing.
That's the note, taking it down.
That's the taking the notes. And one of the things that I thought about is when you go to a meeting, why do you take notes?
So you can remember what's missaid.
Right. Because you don't want to miss something, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to use everything that you wrote down?
No,
but you're not going to remember it all. So that's why you take notes. So, but then when you leave the meeting, what do you do with those notes?
you should review them.
Right. In order to do what?
Highlight what's
to figure out what you're going to implement. You're not going to implement the entire 4 pages worth of notes. You're going to implement a couple of those things. So that's the clarify part. He talks about.
He said identifying what done is, and
Right.
that was crazy, because a lot of times you got a bunch of stuff in your to-do list or in your calendar, and it's just stuff. I think he had his mother's name wrote on his to-do list,
Exactly.
and then he's like, what does that mean? I mean, why do you have your mother's name there?
Well, and you think about it's okay. So we're getting into Christmas time, so I can make a list of the things that I need to do. One of those would be Christmas gifts for Brady. I can write that down, and instantly I'll feel a little better about myself because I now have that on a list. But if that list lays on my desk for 3 weeks, every time I look at it, it almost creates more stress because what I have not done is figured out what I'm getting her for Christmas. Yeah. So now I've just put the thought on a piece of paper, but if I haven't, that's the clarify aspect. If I haven't clarified what I'm going to do about that particular item, then now it's just on a piece of paper, and honestly, it's just staring me in the face.
I think a part of clarification too is understanding when it should be done by. You know what I mean? Like
give yourself
a deadline, because sometimes this is today's to-do list, or this is this week's to-do list. I think sometimes that time element kind of.
Well, and I think too, one of the reasons that, for instance, Andrea's list works is you heard Brandon say earlier, she makes him a list.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that she instantly feels better about Brandon's list because she knows when she gives it to Brandon it's out of her mind because that's her action item. She's not blowing the leaves outside, but she knows Brandon's going to do it because it's on the list now. Yeah. And so I think there's a difference between making a list and then making a list that you've already determined what the action of those items are going to be.
Exactly.
So, I mean, do y'all use lists in your life?
In my life, no, I just got scolded at the grocery store on Sunday. Drew was like, "You don't have a list of what you need?" I was like, "No." So I was creating the list as I picked up stuff. That's kind of backwards. And I end up forgetting a couple things. You know what I mean? And then I don't know.
Why don't we have lists?
Because I think it's a machismo thing, man. Like, we think we can figure it out sometimes.
Well, for me, I have a list. Macy has we have a whiteboard in our pantry closet, and the rule of the house is when you're done with whatever it is that you use, if you finished it, write it on the board.
Put it on the list.
Put it on a list. So that way, when we going to the grocery store, we just take a picture of that list and I will say.
Otherwise, you're thinking all week about the fact that Sunday when we go to the grocery store, I need ketchup.
Yeah, right.
You're thinking about it.
And it does make my life a lot easier.
And then when you go to the grocery store, you forget
the ketchup.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It does make my life a lot easier, and I probably should, use that grocery list example and incorporate that in my day-to-day of just when I come in the morning, what's my top things that I need to get done today before I can say that my day is done.
But I think that the idea of list also pivots towards goals, right? So if you're writing your goals down, you have a systematic way of approaching each one of them. And I think sometimes we know what our goals are sometimes, but we don't write them down, or we don't.
Guilty.
Yeah, we say this is my goal, but what action steps have we taken to systematically get to that goal? We just say this is my goal, whatever. I'm gonna knock my goal out, and you're working, but you don't have a systematic approach to know how you're getting there. So you can't evaluate correctly, you can't tweak correctly, and you can't improve upon whatever that goal is. And that's even with leading people. At the end of the day, we always want the people that we lead to be successful, to achieve their goals. But one, we got to know what their goals are. That means putting it down, and that means we got to hold people accountable. For instance, if I'm leading someone, and I don't know what their income goals are, right? And we didn't write down what that takes for each day, each week. I can't hold them accountable to that, so I can't lead them the right way. So I think those lists it carries over, not just in personal life, but in leading people in business.
Sure.
I think people are scared of those lists, are scared of actually writing it down, because then it makes it real.
Well, and I think the struggle, I think younger people tend to struggle with this more because, I don't know, maybe they lack the wisdom of realizing that having some of these processes in place make your life better. But also, I don't know, I think part of it is just maybe being a male and thinking like, nah, I don't need to write this. I don't need to admit that I can't remember this, or
ego.
And one of the things that I took away that I'm going to implement as far as clarify is the 2-minute rule. David talked about the fact that, the touch it once rule isn't really applicable. The example I think he used was, if it was the touch it once rule, when you wrote down you needed cat food, you'd actually have to go buy cat food right then. Mm-hmm. And that's not feasible. But if it can be done in less than 2 minutes, or maybe from a leadership standpoint, if it could be delegated in less than 2 minutes, do it right then.
Right then.
It takes longer to going back to the capture, it takes longer to capture and organize than it would to just get the task done completely. So if it's an email that pops in, instead of reading it, this is what I'm guilty of. I read the email and I'm like, ooh, I need to do something about that. But I'm not going to do it right now. So I'm going to mark the email as unread.
I do that too.
And then I'm going to come back to it later.
I feel seen.
Yeah. I think we're all guilty of that. And so it's like, if you can respond to that email in less than 2 minutes, do it right then and get it off your plate. And then the other thing is organize. And this is the part that I'd really, like some feedback on. If our listeners would leave some comments about there's a million different calendar systems, programs. There's Outlook, Google, the calendar that's built into your iPhone. And I really want to know, which is the best one to use. And I think that's really where you free up that cognitive real estate, is when you have some type of technology aspect that you can depend on to know, where do I need to be tomorrow, the day after, 2 weeks from now? And I'll give you an example of really what's kind of opened my eyes to this is, so my mother-in-law runs a She's CEO of a healthcare system, and it's always interesting to me. I mean, it can be 8 o'clock the night before, and my wife could ask her, "Hey, what does your schedule look like tomorrow morning? Can you do this or that?" And she pulls out her phone and says, "Oh no, I don't have any meetings in the morning." But at 8 o'clock, then now I'm not saying this applies to all meetings. I'm sure if it's a board meeting or something super important, she's preparing, right? But a lot of times the night before, she doesn't know what time the meeting is because she's in it. I think about how free her mind is to focus on things that a CEO of a healthcare system should be focusing on, not wondering, is my meeting at 8 or at 8:15 in the morning? And that's what because I'm not using that organizational tool. My cognitive real estate's being taken up by what time are my meetings tomorrow? Because they might be written down, but I guarantee what my system is, they're written down on a calendar or a piece of paper here at my office. So when I'm going to bed at home, that tool's not there, right?
Now I'll be honest, I do like Google Calendar because it integrates in your Microsoft system, it integrates on your phone, and you can pull it up anywhere. And I think we started using that for a lot of our teams, and that
was a game changer.
It's a game changer.
They'll push a notification you.
Yeah.
You know.
So do you download a separate app for that?
Not really. No, I just it's connected to my phone.
Yeah, I use it
on the computer.
On the computer. But the iPhone will link Apple Calendar to the Google Calendar, so you'll get an Apple Calendar.
So the calendar that comes on your iPhone is what you're talking about.
If your email is on your phone,
that one right there.
Yep, your email is on your phone. Like everything that I have, all my different email addresses.
It's connected. Not the Apple Calendar,
right?
It's the Google Calendar. I feel like
but it's linked to this one.
But it's linked to the Apple Calendar.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
But you can choose which calendar based on what email address it's linked to.
Yeah, I know we have an email where, all our family stuff goes in.
Oh, well, look, my email's already linked.
Yeah, that's all you got to do.
11 o'clock right there.
Exactly.
I'm not even using this.
That's funny. But we have a family calendar, a family email where like our family events go into that calendar, but it also pushes it. It's Google Calendar also, and it pushes it to my iPhone too. So I feel like the Google Calendar is like that changed the game for me, especially here working in the office and linking them together, taking what I found out in the office, bringing it home, and so I know what's going on.
I need to be better at it too, Drew. I'm the same way. I'll write it down on paper, but like you said, that paper sitting in the office and I'm sitting at home, does it really help me?
One of the things, Brandon, you mentioned this earlier when he talked about what is the definition of done or completed, or what does done look like? And one of the concepts that he talked about was the fact that in business, I mean, are you ever done? I mean, maybe if you're in a manufacturing business, okay, the product is made, packaged, shipped, we might could say that that's done. But when it comes to sales, there could always be more sales, right? There could always be more growth. And he defined it as like ambient anxiety, which is the pool of opportunity. And so I guess it's that, like 2 a.m., like, man, how are we going to get this done? How are we going to reach that next level of growth? And I think to some degree, some of that is good, but you got to figure out how to relax. And this was kind of eye-opening for me was, he compared it to athletics, and Sam, you could probably relate to this. Maybe it is how much time does an athlete spend resting, and how important that is, and not only resting but also stretching, and in karate, it's not about strength. I mean, you look at what's that, Jackie Chan. He wasn't a big dude, right?
No.
But it's about quickness. The quickness is what breaks the board, breaks the stone. It's not the actual strength of the karate chop, if you will. And that a tense muscle is a slow one. So if that muscle isn't relaxed, isn't stretched, and the brain is a muscle, And so I think in today's time, we're all guilty of that, of not taking that time to relax, and really viewing the brain as a muscle. I think a lot of us use and abuse it, and sometimes don't take care of it.
It's a lot more powerful than we know.
One thing that he said, I do remember that, is that after doing an hour's worth of work, you should stop and go for a walk and let your brain breathe, so that way for that next hour you can be that much more effective. That's
like the Power 50 system that we got here.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So we tend to do the opposite. We walk in here and we're just going until it's like, oh my God, I'm hungry. All right, we go run and go get something to eat. Come back, keep going. Oh my God, I'm so tired. All right, I'm going home. We don't actually break up that day to get that give our brains that moment of time to heal or to breathe. And we need to be better about that. Because like you said, Brandon, we do it while we're cold calling. We do maybe an hour and we stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and we tell people, okay, we'll come back at it in another hour, hour later or whatever, and we need to implement that in just how we work as well.
And you know this, B. You work out all the time. If you can't do bench press for an hour. you do the exercise, you rest, then you come back at it.
Yeah, when you actually get bigger if you work out 3 days a week
Then if you
than
work
if
out
you work
every
out
day.
5 days, 6 days a week, and it's because of that rest. And
Well, the muscle builds when it's healing.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. So, well, guys, I'll take us back to the tangible item is those 3 points. To determine what your capture tool is, clarify what the actions item is on it, and then organize it in some system outside of your brain.
Facts.
And I'm going to do a better job of that.
Indeed.
Same.
Y'all have a good week.
If you got 1% of value from this podcast, do us a favor. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell your friend, tell your coworker. Until we meet again. Lead one.